My name is Seraphine Aldridge, but most people just call me Sera. I spent years serving my country believing that coming home meant peace, until I found out my own sister was planning to put me in a rehab center and sell the house our mother left to me. Before you judge me for selling the house my own sister thought she owned, hit subscribe. Because by the time you hear how they plan to erase me from my own life, you'll understand why I chose silence over forgiveness, and why I never looked back. I called to sing happy birthday. Instead, I heard them planning my disappearance. The barracks was quiet at dawn, frost clouding the window, my duffel open on the cot. I had just finished the off-key birthday song when Mia ran off laughing, still wearing the paper crown I mailed her. The screen tilted. I expected the call to end. It didn't. I heard footsteps, a chair scrape, then Lavinia's voice, low, steady. She's limping since that accident. Perfect excuse to get her into rehab. Conrad replied, casual as breathing. We sell the house, clear the Boulder mortgage. She won't fight. She's a soldier, not a lawyer. My breath didn't shake. I stared at the locker where my mother's old house key hung from a green cord. I could still hear her voice the day she pressed it into my palm. This is yours to protect, not theirs to take. I didn't speak. I opened the notes app, wrote 2 words. Operation Homefront. Beneath it, their moves, rehab appraisal sale. My moves, record proof of title, legal counsel. The room felt colder. I imagined the adobe house in Santa Fe, the creak in the hallway, the smell of coffee and cinnamon Mom loved. I had planned to go home next month quietly. Now that plan was ash. You're sure she won't ask questions? Lavinia whispered. She never does, Conrad said. That's why it'll work. They didn't know I was still listening. They didn't know I'd spent years learning when to stay quiet. I ended the call just as Mia's laughter drifted back in, unaware of the storm forming around her. I sat there, hands still, heart steady. If grief had taught me anything, it was this: some battles don't need guns, just proof, timing, and silence. I reached for the envelope in my bag, the deed Mom left me, edges soft from being read too many times. A sticky note was still attached. Don't let anyone take what's yours. The sky outside was turning pale silver. No bugle yet. Just silence and decision. I packed with precision. Uniforms, folded metal wrapped in a sock, deed sealed inside. My fingers brushed the cold metal of the key before I slid it into my pocket. I wasn't going home to visit. I was going to reclaim what was mine. I zipped my bag, checked my gun license, and bought a one-way ticket home. They thought I wouldn't fight. They were wrong. They thought I'd come home to rest. I came home to watch. The adobe house looked smaller than I remembered, but the air still smelled of pine, soap, and old sunlight. I unlocked the front door with the green cord key my mother gave me. The hinges sighed as though the house recognized me before my sister did. Lavinia reached me, first, arms, warm voice, sugar soft. You're really here. She held on just a moment too long. Her eyes flicked past my shoulder, checking if I had brought more than a suitcase. On the wall behind her, the photo of our mother that used to hang there was gone, replaced by a neutral mirror. My reflection stood beside hers like a stranger. Conrad glanced up from the couch, thumb still on the TV remote. Long trip, he asked, not rising. I told him it was fine, though my bones disagreed. The house was quieter than I remembered, too clean, like it had been staged for someone else to live in. They gave me my old room. The bed was made with fresh linens that didn't belong to this house. The dresser drawers smelled of lavender instead of my mother's cedar. I ran a hand along the windowsill, tracing the thin crack she always said she'd fix next spring. Night deepened and the house finally slept. That was when I moved. I placed a recorder behind the vent in the living room, another beneath the hallway console. In the study, I unscrewed the smoke detector and replaced it with a small camera I had calibrated on the flight. The hum of the refrigerator downstairs sounded like static over my pulse. In a storage box under the guest bed, I found bank notices stamped in red, Conrad's name on every envelope. Past due mortgage, $48,000 in debt. Underneath a printed email from Lavinia to a realtor. Once she's in rehab, we list immediately. I took photos. No flash, no fingerprints. Footsteps creaked on the stairs. I shoved the box back, slipped into my room, closed the door to a narrow slit. Lavinia's shadow paused in the hallway. She lingered, frowning as if the air didn't sit right. The silence was a held breath. Then she walked away. Morning came pale and brittle. Over coffee, Lavinia talked about Thanksgiving. Her smile never touched her eyes. Conrad barely looked up from his phone. They believed I was calm, tired, weak. When they left for groceries, I searched the desk in their bedroom. Beneath insurance papers, I found a printed appointment: psych evaluation, Santa Fe Behavioral Health, Wednesday 9:00 a.m. Patient Seraphine Aldridge. Scheduled with my name. Not my permission. My hand didn't shake. I wrote it down in my notebook under a new heading: their next move. They wanted me declared unstable. Easier to sign away someone's life when the paperwork says they don't know what they're losing. I closed the drawer carefully so the dust wouldn't shift. Outside, wind pushed dry leaves along the adobe path like warnings. They were planning a quiet execution of my life. I planned a quiet war. I used to plan bridge extractions in hostile zones. Now I plan how to take back my own home. Santa Fe's cold morning light spilled across the adobe walls as I stepped out, leaving behind Lavinia's staged smiles and Conrad's careless laughter. They thought I was wandering aimlessly through grief and exhaustion. Instead, I was heading downtown with a folder full of deed screenshots and audio files that could burn down everything they were plotting. Atticus Greeley's office sat on the fourth floor of a red brick building above a bakery that smelled like cinnamon and burnt sugar. His handshake was firm, his eyes sharper than any courtroom cross-examination I'd seen on TV. I laid everything out on his desk, the original deed in my name, photos of their emails planning to sell, the house recordings of their voices, discussing rehab and fake concern. He skimmed through it all without a word, then leaned back. "Paperwork wins wars, Miss Aldridge, and you're already holding the gun." He drafted a notice of interest immediately, one stamped document that froze any attempt to sell the house behind my back. Then he pulled out another file. "Your sister submitted a power of attorney. It's dated the week you were overseas. You didn't sign it." He tapped the forged signature with a pen. "That makes this attempted fraud." From his window, I could see the Sangre de Cristo mountains, quiet, solid, unmoved. Just like the path I was carving. By afternoon, I sat at a corner table in the Desert Finch Cafe. Bryn Holloway arrived precisely at 3:00. No small talk, just one brow slightly raised when I said cash sale. 7 days. Quiet. She stirred her coffee once, then said, "I know just the buyer. He likes silence as much as you do." No judgment, no hesitation. She handed me a card with a single name and number. That was enough. Outside, the desert wind was dry, restless, like something underneath the earth was waiting to shift. Back at the house, I kept my footsteps soft. Their voices drifted from the kitchen, talking about listings, buyers, and how I would thank them later. I walked to my old room, opened my phone, and sent Lavinia a simple text. "Thinking of fixing the windows when I get back." Her reply came 10 minutes later. "We'll handle it." No emoji, no warmth, just control. Minutes later, my camera feed pinged. Lavinia stood by the sink phone, clutched in hand, whispering to Conrad. "She knows something." He dismissed her with a shrug, but the camera didn't miss the tightness around her mouth or the fear in her eyes. That was enough. On my notes app beneath Operation Homefront, I wrote Phase 2 legal strike. Before I left Atticus's office, he'd handed me a file with the forged POA and said quietly, "People like them think blood makes ownership. Legally, it doesn't. Evidence does." I almost smiled. That night, while the heater hummed and the desert wind scratched against the windows, I pulled out my uniforms. One by one, I folded them carefully, placing each into a storage box. Not because I was abandoning who I had been, but because who I was needed to evolve. That night, I packed my uniforms into a storage box. Not because I was done being a soldier because the battlefield had moved. They thought the house was waiting for them. Instead, it was waiting for a signature mine. The title company smelled faintly of ink and burnt coffee, the kind of place where lives changed without anyone raising their voice. At 9:15 a.m., I sat across from Silas Redwood, the man buying the house my sister believed would one day be hers. Atticus slid page after page toward me, yellow tags marking everywhere I had to sign. My hand was steady. No hesitation, no guilt. Outside, the sun rose over Santa Fe like nothing unusual was happening. When the last page was stamped, Atticus said calmly, "Funds will clear in 1 hour." Silas stood buttoning his coat. "Enjoy your peace, Miss Aldridge." Bryn gave a brief nod, already emailing the title transfer and utility closures. No celebration, just the clean silence that follows a well-executed mission. I drove back to the house. The wind had died. The sky was too still, like it was holding its breath. Inside, the walls looked different, not because anything had changed, but because they finally belonged to me again. I started with the locks. The old deadbolt came off easily. The new one clicked in with a sound that felt like a full stop. Front door, garage keypad, Wi-Fi passwords all reset. Gas and electric scheduled to shut off by evening. On the kitchen table beneath the empty space where my mother's photo once hung, I left a letter, white paper, black ink. No apologies. By the time you read this, the house is sold. Every step was legal. Your belongings are in storage unit 47B. You have 30 days. Below it, I placed a second envelope, address, access code, inventory list. I wiped the counter, folded the dish towel, and stepped out. The door locked behind me without a sound. Later that afternoon, my phone vibrated, a motion alert from the living room camera. I opened the feed. The front door swung open. Lavinia stepped inside, first suitcase wheels bumping over the threshold. Conrad followed, already complaining about the cold. They laughed until the new deadbolt resisted their key. Confusion crept over their faces like frost. Inside, Lavinia noticed the letter on the table. She opened it. Her lips moved over each word. The color drained from her face. Conrad grabbed it, voice cracking. "She can't do this." But the deed didn't care who shouted louder. He fell silent when he reached the line, "I owe nothing to you except the truth." Lavinia's eyes drifted toward the ceiling, not seeing the cameras, just sensing them. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Sera, this was our home." She wasn't angry. She sounded like someone waking from a long, foolish dream. But my answer was already waiting, printed in neat ink on the page she held. "You only lived in it. You never earned it." Conrad paced, opening drawers as if the house might hand him his power back. It didn't. Lavinia stood still, shoulders sinking, not in defeat, but in understanding. She looked around the empty walls and finally saw the truth. The house had never been hers. Only borrowed kindness turned into assumed entitlement. I watched them from miles away, the way I'd watched enemy movements through desert heat, calm, detached, finished. I closed the app and turned off the feed. That house was no longer my problem, nor theirs. For the first time in years, no one was watching me, needing me, or trying to own me. The silence felt earned. The apartment smelled like new paint and faint lemon cleaner, nothing layered with memory. White walls, a west window framing the dark blue line of the Sangre de Cristo, a kitchenette that clicked when the fridge cycled on. I set the bronze star on the bookshelf and slid my mother's photo beside it. Her hand on the porch rail, chin lifted into sunlight the way she used to meet each morning, like it was an equal. The last box sat on the floor, taped twice. I cut it open and found the old house key asleep under a square of cloth. It felt colder than the room. I held it until the edge marked my palm, then lowered it into a small tin and turned the tiny lock. Some objects you keep, some you lay to rest. Atticus's text buzzed before coffee finished dripping. Everything is legally sealed. They can't touch you. I answered with a single word, thanks. There wasn't anything else to say. The law had finished its part. The life that came next was mine to compose. I made the apartment honest with small acts: 2 plates in the cupboard, a stack of folded towels, boots aligned beneath the bed, the way order makes breathing easier. The quiet wasn't empty. It had shape rooms without watchers, minutes without calculation. From the window I could see a sliver of city, and beyond it the plateau brown and gold under a November morning that didn't ask anything of me. Email chimed, Lavinia's name in the subject line. I read it standing up. You destroyed this family. Mom would hate you. Congratulations, you're alone now. Is that what you wanted? The lines swung between blame and pleading like a door that never catches. I pictured the kitchen table, the letter, the moment the truth pressed its weight on her. I thought of the years I bent to make room for other people's fear. Then I dragged the email into a folder named Evidence, No Reply, and let the lid fall shut inside me. By afternoon, the light thinned and sharpened. I called General Ward. He answered on the second ring. War's over, kid, he said as if we'd already been having the conversation all day. Learn how to live after it. I laughed soft and a little startled. My voice sounded unarmored. Working on it, I said. We let the silence hold a moment, the good kind, and promised coffee sometime that didn't require strategy. News arrived in pieces I didn't chase. Conrad's name in a bank notice forwarded by Atticus, an attachment about overdue payments. No reply from him, of course. Silence was easier than facing the arithmetic. I thought about the way he paced that kitchen, trying drawers like a man testing a fence for weakness. The only sound around me now was the heater's thin whistle and the occasional distant siren, city life, indifferent and merciful. As evening cooled the room, I took the key tin from the shelf and set it in the closet behind a box of winter clothes. It didn't belong out where it could keep speaking. My mother's voice came back then, not as a scold, but as a certainty. One day this house will test you. Don't let it decide who you become afterward. I could feel the answer in my shoulders in the space between one breath and the next. I had chosen. Not revenge. Not triumph. Exit. On the balcony, the wind moved cleanly along the stucco and carried the smell of dust and pignon. The sky had gone the pale, rinsed blue that happens right before stars make their first unapologetic showing. I faced the direction of the old neighborhood and let the distance do its work. The house was still there, of course, stucco porch, the stubborn hallway creak. But it belonged to someone else now, which meant it could no longer claim me either. In that recognition, something inside unclenched. I didn't win because I sold the house. I won because I walked away and didn't look back. When I came in, a white envelope was angled under the door. No return address, clean paper, my name printed small. I slid it open with a thumbnail. Inside lay a single card, no letterhead, no flourish, just one line in a tidy hand. If you ever want to buy it back, I'll keep the door open. S. Redwood. I folded it, didn't reply, just smiled. If my story reached you, if you've ever been betrayed by the people you trusted most, then don't stay silent. Tell me what you would have done. Tell me if you stood up for yourself too, or if you're still gathering the courage to. Leave a comment for me. Or for the version of yourself who still feels small. And if you believe I did the right thing, share this story so others know they're not alone. Remember this: protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's survival. One day you'll have to choose between keeping them or keeping yourself. I chose me.